Hey everybody, welcome to another Rackspace Office Hours. My name's Alan Bush. We're broadcasting live from the Castle, Rackspace's headquarters here in San Antonio, Texas. We got a really cool show today. We are joined, Drew Cox, my co-host, and I are joined by Jeff Cotten, our Senior Vice President and General Manager of our Fanatical Support for AWS division. Jeff, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Good afternoon.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. It has been a very interesting year in AWS, as it always is. It's a big, complex ecosystem. But this year has been very interesting for us here at Rackspace because we've just wrapped up 1 year of providing support for Amazon Web Services.
That is correct. It's been a crazy fast year.
Crazy in a good way, in a very good way. So sometimes in a less than good way, but it's been a great year. We've been able to do a lot of great things with AWS, and we're going to ask you about them here as we go along.
Great.
Yep. I want to welcome everybody that's watching live. You can catch us at ohpodcast.com. Drop a question in there if you have one, or hit us up on Twitter with CloudQA as the hashtag that we're looking for there. If you have a question for Jeff, we'd love to be able to answer it for you here on the air. But if you miss us and you're catching one of our other on-demand versions, either the audio or video on-demand version, just leave a comment where you're watching and we'll go ahead and answer it for you there. But Jeff, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, how long you've been a Racker, and kind of what you do.
All right, very good. Well, hello, everybody. Again, I have been a Racker for 8 years, actually. Wow. December 1st.
Oh, hey. Happy Rackerversary.
Thank you. Yeah. Just a little over a week ago. And it's been a phenomenal ride at Rackspace. Prior to Rackspace, I spent the first 11 years of my career at a little-known company called EDS. It was a little bit of a secret, but it was acquired by HP. And then Taylor Rhodes, our CEO, just couldn't resist my joining Rackspace, and so I did. And it's been an awesome journey. I actually just moved back from living in Europe for 3 years, running our international business, which was a phenomenal journey. Love our international Rackers. Lots of great things, lots of good things going on with AWS and our international markets as well. So back, I've been looking after the AWS business now since July, and there's a lot going on.
There definitely is. So we launched at reInvent last year, right? Which was that in October last year, or was it in November?
Well, we launched in October, and then reInvent was November last year.
November, okay. Yeah. All right. So we launched and just got everything started. We were able to announce at reInvent this year that we are a premier partner.
Yes.
And that we have more than 500, actually now more than 600, I think, is the latest tally that they've been giving us. 600 certified professionals within the Rackspace organization, which is, I think, just fantastic. And there's been so much going on. So I definitely want to ask you a little bit more about kind of how we've ramped that up. But, can you tell us a little bit more about, what's going on with AWS and how Rackspace is supporting AWS?
Absolutely. So look, first of all, reInvent was phenomenal this year, as it is every year. They had 32,000 attendees out in Las Vegas, which I can tell you the Sands Expo Center cannot handle that many people. But you really feel like you're at the center of the universe in terms of what's going on in tech land while reInvent's going on. And, one of the things I can tell you is that this year felt like there was a lot of evolutionary change in their product portfolio, but we didn't necessarily feel like there was revolutionary change. And we certainly heard that from a lot of the attendees. There were lots of great new things and things that I can talk about in a little bit here that Rackspace knows and believes that we can take advantage of that they launched last week. But I think, one of the key headlines to take away is they're going to launch over 1,000 new features and products this year.
Yeah.
And that's on top of something like 700 the year before. And so their pace of innovation just keeps increasing. It's just phenomenal. And it literally, I was talking to an AWS executive yesterday, and he said, I can't even wrap my brain around everything that we've just launched. And so if you're a customer out there trying to figure out how to consume the portfolio, it's extremely difficult. And so ultimately, that's one of Rackspace's biggest value props.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I mean, that's one of the things that we want to focus on is make the cloud, this multi-cloud world that we live in. I mean, that's the reality is that a lot of our customers aren't just choosing one cloud and sticking with it. They're choosing multiple clouds and some dedicated and hybrid configurations on top of that. That's really complex. Staying on top of one cloud is complex. If you want to go ahead and worry about all the other ones there, you really need to have a partner that you can trust that'll help you figure out that ecosystem.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I was noticing from afar. I wasn't able to be at the event itself, but we're seeing a lot of this growing traction. You've got Chef making announcements about partnerships. You've got VMware making announcements about partnerships. So not only is the pace of growth within the feature set at AWS itself growing quickly, but when you add complexity of partnerships, tacking on their existing infrastructure and their existing technology, you really start seeing that this is going to become an incredibly complex and powerful set of tools. But that means how do you get value out of that as a potential consumer? And so the pace of change just continues to accelerate, and exponentially so when you start talking about other technologies that can be paired well. So what does that look like from a Rackspace perspective?
Yeah. So, someone asked me the other day, you mentioned it, we've talked a lot about the number of certifications that Rackspace has. And the reason we talk so much about that is not so much just to, pound our chest that, we've been able to train a lot of Rackers on the AWS platform. It's really to try to give an order of magnitude on the impact that we can have to our customers because of the amount of expertise that we have, because the platform is so complex. So, we have a great solutioning organization, which is kind of where it all starts once you engage with a sales Racker and working with our architects, who in a lot of cases have been practitioners and actually deployed AWS services for our customers. And so to your point, they not only know how to put the AWS platform to work for their business, they also have good understandings of the ecosystems and some of the tools that are AWS specific that have been launched that customers can take advantage of, but trying to figure all that out is very difficult. We met with a partner of AWS's last week that Rackspace does not currently do business with, a company by the name of Sumo Logic. And, gosh, how many of you out there have heard of Sumo Logic? But they're a very interesting company that we believe could add some value to our customers and being able to make how we provide services a little bit easier. And so, that's just one little example of very many that exist in that AWS ecosystem that, we're excited to continue to explore and figure out how we bring in our service model to our customers, but certainly tries to help ease the complexity problem for customers.
Yeah, it's definitely a broad and ever-growing conversation. You mentioned our solutioning technology people. We've got people in the sales process that can speak to the technologies that customers are already using, as well as some of those additional technologies that they may want to use to solve specific problems, and then marrying those two in a logical way, not just solving what they have now, but moving that forward to the future. So as you see increasing demand and increasing curiosity from our customer base and the potential customers out there coming to us, what are some of those technology areas that people are wanting to bring with them and add Amazon's solutions to them? And then what are some of those that people are really chomping at the bit to start getting value out of they don't get value out of today?
Great question. So let me kind of break it down this way. First of all, one of the things that we're really trying to get very clear, both internally here at Rackspace and our service levels, as well as with our customers in terms of where they on their journey to the cloud, is using Gartner's bimodal IT framework, right? Where you have sort of mode 1 and mode 2 applications. And really that's just a different way of saying sysad or sysops and DevOps type applications. So for the mode 1 sysops types of applications, this is where Rackspace has tremendous experience and historical services in our managed hosting business that we now offer via our managed AWS business. And we have a lot of strengths and capabilities that we bring to customers, and now helping them figure out how do you bring the AWS features to bear on those mode 1 applications. So let me give you an example. So last week, one of the features that AWS launched that we're actually quite excited about is something called Personal Health Dashboard. And this is something that we know a lot of customers are going to take advantage of. But once again, many of AWS's customers won't even know that that feature just launched. And it's something that our support Rackers are going to be able to take advantage of, because it's a personalized view that you can have by account on the things that you most care about the health of your compute environment. And if you're a Mode 1 SysOps style application, having those types of metrics at your ready in terms of how is my EC2 compute slice for my database performing right now, and real-time metrics and alerting that's delivered in a more personalized way during the holiday season, as an example, on your web scale layer is very important. And so once again, if you're a customer, though, knowing and keeping track of all those little features that are available for Mode 1 type applications is going to be very difficult. But that's an example of where we would add value for those. The Mode 2 and the DevOps are probably where it's more interesting and kind of really more pertinent to your original question, which is that we see customers who are on a long journey to DevOps.
Right.
And typically when we catch those customers, they are, perhaps they've deployed Chef and they've got a source code repository where they're able to do some level of automated deploy of their application. But they are looking to see, well, gosh, we know there was a new ecosystem partner that just launched at reInvent last week, and we don't understand how to take advantage of that technology. Sumo could be a good example of that. And so that I think is frankly a challenge for us, but also for our customers at figuring out what does that journey to long-term DevOps actually look like. And that is where we are trying to add more value with our professional services, where we come in and assess, where are you? What types of tooling have you deployed? Here are ideas and standards and best practices that we have that will help you really take advantage of DevOps and do it in a way in which we can help you manage that and try to control it. Because if you just try to go adopt all the new leading edge technologies that are out there, you're probably going to get yourself in trouble pretty quickly.
Likely.
And then there are new database technologies that are constantly evolving, and AWS themselves is continuing to extend their data analytics and data platforms. And so trying to then bring the automation and the omnis that they release for data into your DevOps methodology also becomes very complex and difficult. So that's sort of what we're trying to do is help those customers along that long-term journey and understand where they are today, and then assess what features we believe are best to bring to bear today, and then help them evolve their capabilities over time.
Well, it's an exciting position to be in. One, to be such a big part of reInvent, where you get to see a variety of different business requirements and solutions that have been delivered in one place, and kind of rub shoulders with people who are doing unique and interesting things with an ecosystem.
Absolutely.
But also as being a company that helps to execute against customer goals, we get to see a lot of those in practice in real time and help them along that journey. So when a customer comes and says, here's what we're trying to do, and paints a picture, we get to take from that experience of seeing where things went really well and seeing where we could have probably done things better had we had another shot at it, and get to take that opportunity to apply those lessons learned to one of our customers doing something new. And so it's really exciting to look at the compounding value we're able to bring, because we get to see such a broad cross-section of customer problems, and we get to solve such a broad cross-section of customer solutions. What are some of the maybe the parts of the business, the broad technology business out there, where our customers are really seeing value in the cloud DevOps model moving forward? Maybe a digital type of a workload or something along those lines?
Yeah. So look, first of all, we work with a range of customers in terms of what the scale of their environment is. So let me give you some examples. So a lot of times we will work with a customer who has a mission critical application. Maybe they're a SaaS company, and so their app is their business. But that's really the one thing that they want us to help them with in terms of being able to either automate it or better manage it if it's a Mode 1 SysOps type of an application. We then have different types of customers who are trying to either shut down data centers or evolve their IT environment and transform it and add some of the DevOps capabilities, but they're not going to be able to do that to the entire estate. And so they're looking for advice and helping be able to manage across the range of different types of applications. And so, I think your question is really more sort of directed at, let's say, those SaaS types customers who they've got mission critical application and how are we adding value. Look, as you think about DevOps today, first of all, one of the things that really impressed me last week at reInvent was the number of, truly enterprise mission critical workloads that people are now running on AWS. When you look at their EC2 compute layer, these guys have optimized flavors to run ERP and SAP as an example. And that's not something 2 years ago I think anybody thought they would actually be doing, is running their massive scale SAP ERP system at Amazon, and now they are. And so when you look at all of those different types of flavors of applications that now Amazon is very credible and able to run, you do have to look at DevOps and how are we going to be bringing new capabilities to those types of customers. And once again, it is trying to catch them at various points along their journey. So there's another thing that I thought was really relevant, especially as it relates to how we're better serving our customers who are running mission critical at scale applications. One of them is called AWS organizations. So one of the challenges today is a lot of companies are trying to use the AWS account to break up their IT estate. And you may even try to do that for a specific application if it's a large application that's highly componentized. And it becomes very difficult to try to keep up and manage across all of those various accounts. And AWS organizations is a way to actually start doing templating and profiling for multi-accounts, where it makes account organization much easier, especially as you start to aggregate things for an application. So we're actually dealing with one customer today who has 54 different accounts, and they're in the process of getting all of those migrated over, and then they're going to be looking at consolidating their data centers. And of course, one of the first things you do is you look at the applications that easily can port over, that have automation capabilities, and you can take advantage of the migration offerings that Rackspace has and exist in the marketplace. And but that organization of those account structures when you're doing that type of migration is something that's very, very difficult. So yet another example of a new feature that Rackspace will be putting to use in 2017 to help our customers with migrations and how they organize those accounts, as well as then how they apply and adopt that for a range of applications. And as I said, perhaps even one application.
Well, you're definitely talking about additional complexity in a lot of different areas now. One of the things that we hear customers having concerns about with Amazon is understanding, what is actually, which pieces of this solution are actually costing me what amount of money. So I've got 2 or 3 different components. What's this costing me versus what's that's costing me? How am I maximizing my efficiency on the money-making sides of the house versus the things that are actually generating me revenue, and understanding all those pieces. So from having 50-something accounts, that can get really complicated. Understanding exactly how you do it, you're kind of solving those problems however you can think up a good way to do it, and being able to come alongside a customer and helping them see where their costs are coming from, where their value is coming from, and mold that a little bit. Seems like something a lot of customers would be looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. So cost optimization is a great example. In fact, Rackspace just enhanced our cost optimization abilities in Q4, where we've launched a new product, a new feature that really is tooling for our internal support employees to give a better experience to our customers and have more intelligence about how the current environment is performing, make recommendations even on where a customer can take advantage of things like reserved instances. Right. Another example of complexity in the AWS environment. And so we're very excited about that. We call the product Compass 2.0 as a term if you deal with Rackspace you may hear about, but really it's about cost optimization. And so it puts our account managers in a much better space to have a conversation with a customer either at the very beginning of their journey or perhaps through the middle of their experience in working with Rackspace, where we are constantly helping them figure out, can you change something in your existing architecture to improve the cost equation, or can you take advantage of a new feature that's been launched where maybe you can now launch a lower cost instance that Amazon may have now because you actually need a memory optimized capability with a lot of hard drive, and they've launched a new feature that's cheaper, right? So that's really what that is all about. And this is probably one of the biggest demand signals that we see from both our existing customers as well as new prospects that we talk to is is, hey, I am absolutely struggling with the amount of technology that I've deployed on AWS. It isn't what I thought it was going to cost, and I need some help with figuring out how to optimize it. And so, yeah, that's a big area of interest from an AWS perspective, and certainly an area of domain expertise that you really have to develop and an MSP must offer for its customers.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot to sort out there.
You mentioned earlier the way that we are supporting our customers, right? And for years, our customers have come to us for fanatical support. It's what we really built Rackspace on, is this idea that we're going to go above and beyond for the customers. But now, as we are supporting hardware and infrastructure that we don't have access to, can you talk a little bit about how you mentioned some of the tooling? Can you mention a little bit more about how we are providing fanatical support, especially when we're not able to, physically send the tech into the data center and patch a server or something like that?
So this is probably one of my favorite questions when you think about cloud, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that a lot of people still quite don't get about cloud is that cloud gives you APIs and portals and ways to go and spin up infrastructure instantaneously. And one of the real secrets here is that you've got to design your applications for resiliency.
Yeah.
And the reason it's so cheap is that, hey, in some cases it isn't designed to be bulletproof the way we used to design data centers with cooling and redundant power sources and the interiors to be spotless. And I'm not suggesting that cloud data centers aren't spotless and amazing, because they are. But the point is the urgency around when there's a failure is just very different in a cloud operating environment. So a great example, I think, is earlier this year, Amazon actually had an outage in Sydney, Australia, and it was due to a large storm that came through, and they have multiple availability zones down in Australia, and not all of them went down, but some of them did. And we talked to a number of customers who were just shocked and frankly very upset that there was this outage and their applications were down. And obviously the answer is, well, gosh, you've got to design for resiliency now in the era of the cloud if you're going to take advantage of the capabilities that cloud now gives you. And so this is one of the things that we actually are very excited about helping customers with, is how do you go and take advantage of the things like availability zones, and then the API that they give you to detect for issues where you're either seeing load that's unexpected or an outage, and then being able to auto scale and auto fail your application to other availability zones. And it's in addition to cost optimization, I would say that this is one of those examples that a lot of companies and people don't understand how to do, and what features to take advantage of, and which ones matter when you're trying to design applications for resiliency, that are very important. And this is one of the things that we do at the very beginning of our process with our customers, is understand what is the criticality and the expected uptime and availability of a particular application, and then make recommendations to them on how they should design for failure to take advantage of the various technologies that Amazon, or frankly any cloud provider, and the ones that we support, offer.
Well, I think that's the key there, is that, designing for failure. And I think that's something that we, meaning the greater cloud industry, kind of failed at originally whenever the cloud first launches, acknowledging that there are going to be failures that happen. And, this is not, like you mentioned, this is not that data center, build it as strong as you can and make sure that, nothing is going to take it out, short of that, fabled meteor that's eventually going to take out one of these data centers. But, we need to design applications for that. And so, a lot of our customers and a lot of people in general, a lot of customers in general are using these applications that are old, especially in the terms of cloud computing, greatly predate the cloud. What are some of the ways that we can help those people get ready for the cloud? You mentioned, talking about it. Is that kind of the advisory aspect of things?
Yeah, well, so there's a couple of things. Obviously, there's tooling technology that you can deploy. RightScale is a great example. If you do not have a Mode 2 DevOps type application, you can use RightScale as a technology to detect for health of underlying compute instances, and then be able to auto provision new instances. And it does that via the technology and not via application automation.
Sure.
And so once again, yeah, it really is through our solution architecture and advisory capabilities where a customer comes in, and once again, there's sort of a deep assessment that has to occur here, looking at what is the application. Is it a custom application? Is it a COTS application? Do we have expertise expertise in a COTS application, if it's an e-commerce engine, as an example, where we have deep expertise in Magento or name your flavor of e-commerce. And in some cases, we can go very deep with them in their application, and not only making the recommendation and design, but then actually implementing the application and then the associated resiliency, setting up auto-scaling capability. Amazon has its own native auto-scale capability as well. Right. So, we will once again have to assess and look at what is the underlying specifics, what are the business requirements, what is the application, what is the application platform environment, and look at budgets and what are their allowable spend capabilities, and then be able to do the actual deployment. But it's not just a discussion. It's not just solutioning. It is then actually bundling those capabilities and then deploying them for customers as well.
So you start with a conversation to get the idea, to understand the, how critical is this? What are you using? And then once you have that, we have that expertise, and then we can actually go on and execute on that.
Yeah, that's right.
Use the tooling. That's great.
Yeah, I think another point though, to go back, because it's actually an interesting one, right? This is obviously one of the big questions we had for ourselves as we thought about, man, we are so good at running our own data centers and then dealing with issues if there are. I mean, for our rackers here, they're on the call today. We all know about the status lights that exist in our building today that tell us what's going on right now in the environment. And you don't have that now with AWS, right? And so there was always a question at the beginning as we embarked on this of, gosh, are we going to have a bat phone straight to all of their different data centers where if something happens, we know? And the truth is we have developed great operational expertise and relationships with AWS such that we do know when these things happen, and we do have the ability to contact certain individuals. But we are treated and we operate just as they do with all of their customers. And the number one starting expectation is that you have designed for resiliency. And so I think that really is the big takeaway. And frankly, while we have had a region where we have customers down in Australia that's had an outage, we were able to operate just fine with our standard incident management procedures, as well as with our things that we've implemented with AWS when something like that happens, and being able to serve our customers.
Well, if you put yourself in the position of someone who, let's say, was in one of those data centers and found that the solution that they assumed was going to stand up through the magic of the cloud wasn't quite as magical as they expected, then you look at, well, what do we do now? There's a couple of options. You can get a partner to come in and help you reassess, or you call up HR and say, we're going to need X number of experts as quickly as you can get them. And then you go along that path, and filling those seats within your organization with the right people is not an easy solve. And then getting in front of the right people to help you make that re-architecture and solve that problem, so you've plugged those gaps, isn't an easy solve either. When you can partner with somebody like Rackspace to get those early components taken care of, and then have people you can lean on once you're operational with that new solution around the clock, that you don't have to fill seats and find those hard to keep people, then you're really talking about a very valuable partner that can solve a lot of the problems that you experienced, and not with headcount, but with more of an ongoing operational solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think you've just eloquently laid out the business case and the value prop for Rackspace. What I think is so powerful, though, and compelling about what you just talked about is that you can get access now to all of this expertise. If you're a startup shop, probably not Series A, but if you're a young company and you can't afford a 24/7, 365 systems engineering team that is deep on the AWS platform, which if you're going to do that across, literally 3 shifts of people, you're probably going to have at minimum 15 or so engineers to be able to keep that application up and running. So you can do the math as to what that's going to cost. And Rackspace can get you into a solution for as low as $1,000 a month, at least in the USD, and then you get access to all of those certified engineers that we spoke about, the deep expertise of knowing how to design for resiliency, et cetera. You get that solutioning process at the very front end. And so obviously this is one of the things that, a lot of our existing and prospect customers are very excited about, is what you can do at the very beginning and get a business up and running, or support an application that may not have the budgets associated with it to have that type of a support engineering capability behind it.
And if you're going to have a consulting situation where you just get a point in time, this is how you solve that problem. Once that consulting is over, and once you've finished that solution, you run with it with whatever solution you have. But when you have an ongoing relationship, then we come back from reInvent and say, there's this new feature that's going to, solve this problem or do this thing you're already doing well, more efficiently. You get to take advantage of that without, calling the consultant up every so often and saying, has anything changed? Are we still good? What's your new solution? That's ongoing value you get to realize as you move forward.
Well, go on.
No, I was just going to say, it's one of the reasons why we have 2 service levels, right? So at Rackspace, for our managed AWS business, we have Navigator and Aviator. And Navigator is really intended for that type of customer who may have their own operational expertise, but they're actually kind of looking for some of the things that you just spoke about, right? So it's sort of a safe pair of hands, right? So you get access to all of our tooling, you get the best practice consulting, and then you get access to people as you need it, right? So you get to call in and say, hey, I'm dealing with this challenge. My application's done this. Can you help me look at it and look at my AWS environment and help me figure out if there's something that I should be doing differently? But we aren't sort of sitting in the co-pilot seat operating and flying the plane with you, which is sort of the analogy that we're using on the Aviator side of the house, where we are actually operating and managing the customer's applications. But I think that Navigator service level is very important for those customers that are just looking for someone that they can look to for advice and counsel at different times. The other point I would bring up that's actually related to that is look, in full transparency, which we're a full transparency culture, we have some customers who will start with us and have some of their own capability and say, gosh, I don't know that I'm going to need Rackspace's full managed support for the life of this particular application. And one of the things that I think is really important for us in terms of how we deliver our service, but also for our customers to understand, is that it's not just about what we do for one specific application. What we're seeing a lot of customers do is get the first one migrated over, and then it may be in a steady state if we've got it architected properly and doesn't require a lot of operational support. But then we help them with the second and the third and the 10th and the 100th, right? And that is one of the other real value propositions of working with an MSP, and certainly with Rackspace, is not only being able to transform 1 or 2 applications, but then being able to use that managed service that you have and migrating and moving more applications over.
Right.
So we had a question from one of our Rackers who's in Fanatical Support for AWS, Martin Smith. He's a good friend of the show.
Martin.
Hey, Martin, how you doing? So he wanted to know about the relationship between Rackspace and AWS and how, in the year since we've launched, how has that evolved and changed?
Oh, that's a fun one. I think without giving away too much, when we first launched this service, I think it's safe to say Amazon was a little sort of scratching their head thinking, man, what is Rackspace doing? We thought they were a competitor. And one of the comments that I heard at reInvent this past week, mainly from Rackers, was how the dialogue has really shifted. Last year, because we had just launched, the number one question, and most of the questions that we got were, gosh, why is Rackspace here? Aren't you competing? And, that dialogue radically shifted this year. And what I can tell you is that the relationship at this point is extremely strategic. It is extremely healthy. Terry Wise, who runs their global marketing and channel partner organization, is someone that we are best friends with and spend a lot of time with. We've got a great relationship there. And, I think that the big takeaway is that, we're looking at how do we co-invest in 2017, either whether around offers or go-to-market activities. And I think that shows the sort of where the relationship is. Amazon would not be doing that if they didn't see tremendous value there. And the other thing that we actually love about AWS and Amazon in total is that they really are a meritocracy. They're customer obsessed. That's their term, and we're fanatical. That's our term. So there's a lot of alignment between those two areas, and AWS has seen that in spades, and that's one of the reasons that they're so excited about the partnership. And, we were very excited to participate in a number of their events, their sponsored events last week, whether it was with their analysts, et cetera, and they only highlighted a small number of partners. And so I'm not telling anything secret, but one of the major partners that Terry talked about last week at reInvent was Rackspace. Actually, in his opening remarks at the partner conference that started at the front end of reInvent. And so, those are some examples that highlight, I think, sort of where the relationship is today.
Yeah, great. It was nice to see on the keynotes during reInvent, getting a shout out from AWS themselves on our status as a premier partner.
So, they even gave us a great booth location. We had a booth right behind their prime booth and got lots of great traffic. So yeah, I think we're doing pretty well together.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been doing such great stuff. We had the infrastructure available as far as Rackers and the educational programs in place to get everything set up. And that's why, going from 0 to over 600 certified professionals is it's a pretty big deal. I think that we are one of the most credentialed managed services partners with AWS, which is, I think, just great to see, and it allows us to do so much more. And every day we're adding more and more to that.
We are, yeah. Look, it's not easy. We have multiple people, myself included, by the way, who've taken some of these certificates, and you fail them. And the very first one, these are not easy tests. This is not sort of click through. I do think that the AWS, whether it be the associate programs or the fully credentialed certification programs, are kind of becoming the new industry credentialing. It used to be MSDN, and certainly Microsoft has a great credential program as well, but this one's relatively new. And gosh, I can tell you that it was one that they highlighted significantly last week at reInvent. And we are very proud of the fact that we have so many credentialed Rackers. And obviously, it's not just within our AWS practice. We have Rackers all over the company who are becoming AWS certified. And it just shows you, once again, I think, the value of that credential in the marketplace.
It's a great fit culturally, because you said that we went from 0 to 600. My guess is that when we were at 0, we just hadn't identified a lot of the people who are already credentialed, because we have a culture built on learning and being in these ecosystems and knowing how to best help customers, and who are just really interested in having a good handle on what's out there and what can be done, what's possible. And so my guess is that those first few identified credentials were probably long held and kind of no-brainers, that we've got people who are out there learning new technologies all the time and gathering these credentials all the time. It's part of the culture here. We have people who are, putting their expertise into open source technologies and who are contributing there. We've got people who, like you said, with Microsoft, have been deep partners with Microsoft. We've got all sorts of MVPs on that side. So to have such a large group of credentialed Rackers in the AWS world isn't a surprise to us. Now, it's exciting to see the way that other people react to how quickly we have gone from reporting 0 to reporting these growing and increasingly impressive numbers. But internally, it's not a huge surprise. It's just a continuation and extension of what we've already kind of built ourselves on.
Well, and we're also hiring from the outside. We are. That's always interesting to see those job postings. We're hiring AWS DevOps engineers, and that's great to see. There are so many talented professionals, and we're happy to have them as Rackers now.
Yeah, and give an opportunity, obviously, to, as you covered, our existing Rackers. There's a lot of interest in wanting to join this mission and put their credentials to use, because so many do have it that aren't necessarily supporting AWS customers. But the other thing I think is that regardless of whether we have an employee who is providing support to an AWS customer or not, these are if you're going to be a practitioner in this industry, you really have to know everything that's out there, right? You've got to know what's going on with Google right now, right? They're doing a lot in terms of building their own resiliency program right now, right? They have a certified support offering for resiliency. And, I think if once again, if you're an engineer, I would encourage everyone to understand what is going on right now with Azure. What does their latest set of product features look like? What's going on with AWS? What's going on with Google? And what's going on with OpenStack, right? We can't forget about OpenStack. It's still very critical to the industry and to our future. But I think you've got to really kind of have a good understanding of what's going on across all those platforms.
Well, I mean, take the example of some of our, some of our support rackers that are supporting existing customers, and they might not be, especially for our larger customers, it's highly unlikely that we are supporting the entirety of their cloud consumption. And the ability to be able to understand what's happening, what the latest trends are, we're already listening and working to optimize the existing workloads that we're working with our customers. But to be able to say, hey, you have this problem, and we've been able to solve that for other customers on AWS or on Azure or through private cloud with Microsoft or OpenStack or VMware. We've got this whole multi-cloud portfolio. We have to be able to speak to that to our customers to be able to provide the best support for them. And I think that we're going to see more specialized workloads that we're able to say, hey, put this part of your business on Azure and this part on AWS and put this part on Rackspace dedicated servers. And we've got the technology to make all of that talk to each other.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I think the other sort of really interesting thing about that is if you're out there using cloud technologies, you're not a racker. You also need to kind of have an understanding of what are all these different cloud platforms and what are your objectives that you're trying to solve, and decide how much of it you want to sort of transfer control to an MSP to make some of those decisions for you versus yourself. And we try to pull that out of customers all the time. But you mentioned our point of view in terms of helping customers figure out which platform is the best platform. And I think this is going to be one of the real distinctions of different MSPs is how good they are at helping customers diagnose which platforms are the best. Obviously, I manage the AWS business here at Rackspace, so I'm pretty passionate about AWS. But look, I really, it's all about customer fit, and so we absolutely want to help customers. There are still advantages today of private cloud and some great use cases out there for private cloud and things that we know are going to be beneficial for customers to maybe not put their eggs all in one basket and put everything into a public cloud, et cetera. And so, that absolutely, I think, is one of the real distinctions for us and our ability to go and help customers figure out which platform.
Right. Well, we've talked a little bit about the, the year that was with AWS, and we've talked a bit about reInvent, but I want to hear, maybe your top 2 or 3 things that you were looking forward to in 2017 with AWS, maybe things that you think that customers are going to be able to take advantage of, you think that Rackspace is going to be able to take advantage of. I'd love to hear some prognostication here, and we won't hold you to it.
Number one is Snowmobile. We can't wait to see what happens with Snowmobile. So.
Yeah. So this is their new kind of the mass data collection.
It's already got a nickname, Snowmo.
Snowmo, yeah,
Snowmo,
absolutely. So tell us a little bit about that, just to get everybody on the same page. But it's like physically moving data for you, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. This is, I think, going to be Containers 2.0. So we can all remember back when Google and others started to launch these shipping containers with compute. You could put them all over the world, and we had one rigged up in the parking lot here for a while. And so now, AWS has created what they call Snowmobile. It's a big white shipping container. They rolled it out on stage last week with an 18-wheeler. Wow. We all joked it was actually running. So I'm sure we all took in a little bit of fumes last week. But it will be interesting. Look, so one of the things that obviously compelled them to do this is they launched Snowball first, which was basically a smaller packaged way to ship really hard disk out to a customer data center, or data center anywhere in the world, be able to replicate your data onto Snowball and then ship it back to AWS. They plug it in real time, and it was just a seamless way for them to be able to move and exchange data. And they started to get requests for much larger volumes of data to be able to be migrated. And so now, if you're doing a rather large data center consolidation, AWS can ship you a Snowmobile out, and you hook it into your data center and your network. you replicate massive amounts of data over, and then you get it shipped back. And, literally they told me that afternoon, they already had a customer down in Asia who was asking to have a container shipped down and moved back. So it will be interesting. Obviously, most companies who are disruptors, as AWS was, have to move up the value stack and move up market into enterprise. And you can clearly see that and their customer testimonials and the actual applications now they're managing in the enterprise. And so data center consolidation really is, I think, the next big one. And obviously with the economic pressures that a lot of companies have today, and frankly, I think the realization that you need to get the sort of legacy back office stuff off your plate and let the CEO try to focus on bringing innovation to the business. There is an awakening to try to consolidate data centers and get out of them as much as you can. And so clearly this is a demand signal that they're seeing. And so that one's going to be an interesting trend to see what happens with Snowmobile. I predict that it won't be as successful as Snowball was, but we'll see.
But it's on a massively larger scale than Snowball was. Massively. So, what's great about that is that, Amazon, the parent company, is fantastic at logistics. I mean, like, they are a logistics company and they show that off by selling things and getting them to you. And so, yes, would I trust them to, put that into to put all my data into a container and then move it back to their data centers? Yeah, absolutely. I think they can do that. And it's, and like you said, getting that out of your data center, like, this is knocking down some of the things that I think are probably keeping a lot of people inside their own data center still.
Yeah. There were a couple other things that they launched last week, not probably so much applicability to us, but I think will be very interesting in terms of the future of IT. Obviously, most of the big cloud providers now are very focused on machine learning and big data analytics. And, they launched their entire machine learning capability last week. They've launched a whole new set of features on IoT. I predict that IoT is probably still kind of coming out of the peak of inflated expectations and, kind of still going to be going through the doldrums a little bit. Sure, there are some real applications of IoT, but I still think that we're, a little bit out from having mass adoption there. The machine learning one, I think, is just going up the peak of inflated expectations. But I got to tell you, opening up the Omni for Alexa, which they called Lex, I think is really interesting. I do. I think that, we talk about serverless today, and serverless is going to kind of be the next big sort of trend, I think, from a cloud and infrastructure perspective. But, as you think about millennials and how millennials want to interact in the world, much less just devices, you want to talk to everything now, right? Who wants to actually have to type and use a GUI? I mean, GUI is going to go the way of mainframe, I think, right? So then with the opportunities that something like Lex opens up, where you can start to create applications and it's just literally, I speak to it. I think that's going to be quite interesting to track and see how that goes.
Yeah, and it seems like they're kind of converging this Internet of Things and machine learning and everything on this new concept store that they just opened up in the Seattle area, their Amazon Go market, which is apparently run by witches and warlocks, and so like I'm not quite sure how they're going to manage that, but I mean they're putting a lot of their own technology to use in that, and that's where I think a lot of consumers between Alexa and these new marketplaces, I think, are going to interact with that in the next year.
Yeah, completely agree.
Right. Well, you talk about this disruption that Amazon is doing, and you think about other markets like Uber, where they've completely disrupted the entire automobile world, not just taxis. And then if you put yourself in some more legacy business that's established and that's been doing something really well for a long time, it's kind of striking the fear of God into them, and they know they need to step their game up and become more innovative and be able to respond more quickly to the way the markets are shifting. And so tools like having Snowmobile, where you can really accelerate your move from a data center where you've been doing things in the old-fashioned and functional way. You're still successful, but you see some of these upstart businesses coming in and really shaking things up. And I think it's just going to push the accelerator on a lot of these things. I think it's necessary for businesses looking at their strategy moving forward to consider that maybe some startup that hasn't even really gotten going yet is going to completely upend their business if they're not the ones doing the innovation.
Yeah, and this is what's so fun about Rackspace. I had the great fortune of being in a San Antonio event last night, and there's all kinds of tech incubators that are going on throughout the state of Texas now. We've got Tech Block and Geekdom and things like that now in San Antonio. But you're starting to see pockets of innovation and startup communities emerge outside of Silicon Valley, which I also think is kind of fun. And technology is enabling that, right? You can now get very smart on how to spin up a server and be sitting at your home and anywhere in the world, right? Yeah. And I think that's very interesting. And the other thing I think that's machine learning is going to really open up is, I don't know about you, but travel is one of those areas to me that still is just like, it's so dark and murky to figure out the best hotel price or the best airline price, right? And that one to me is still one that's ripe for disruption. And you can start to see now where some of these cloud providers are starting to enter that space a little bit and at least just make it easier to get access. And there's already been some disruption with what's known as GDSs, global distributors of airline prices and hotel prices and that kind of thing. But yeah, there certainly are a lot of industries, I think, that are ripe still for disruption. And that, I think, is what is so compelling about the cloud. It's already a, hundreds of billions of dollar size market. And right now, it doesn't seem like there's an end because there's still so much disruption left in businesses out there, and they will use cloud technologies to disrupt.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, Jeff, thank you for joining us. We're already running up at the end of our time here, but I want to say thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to join us and to talk. It's been super insightful. And I know we've had a very productive year with our Fanatical Support for AWS. It's been great to watch this program grow. And I know that 2017 is going to have a lot in store for us. So thank you for sharing with us.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for this week. So make sure to join us every week. We do this just about every week. Next week, we're joined by Brian Kelly, Rackspace's Chief Security Officer. We're going to do kind of the same thing. We're going to do a wrap-up of security over 2017 and talk about what we have in store for 2016, and then what we have in store for 2017.
To wrap up 2016.
We've also booked him for December of 2017. So I don't know, but then we do this every week. You can catch up on demand with either the audio podcast or the video podcast at ohpodcast.com. And if you have any suggestions for shows for the coming year, please feel free to hit us up, and we'd be happy to get something on the calendar there. So
we've got experts we can leverage.
Exactly, we have thousands and thousands of Racker experts that we want to showcase here. So we have that coming up in the years ahead. So on that note, just want to say thanks again, and we'll see you next week.